Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I'm also, among the other thing, advisor to the President on economic strategy of Rosmet, but I meant to talk about the economy, actually. I want to say something of our West partners. I don't think that they are to be considered as guilty of this decline in trade. I also want to comment on the reduction of oil prices. Ever since 2013, when oil prices were $120 per barrel, we've been declining. At the time, there was no problem with Ukraine, so basically sanctions had nothing to do with that. And then we dropped from 4% of growth rate, we went to 1.8. And this reduction in the growth rate was in a way compensated with a substantial growth in the financial sector that grew by 13% in one go. Credit cards started being operative, so basically that brought about an important growth as well. Then investment dropped all of a sudden, and it's not because there was a bad investment environment, because private investment grew by 11% and real investment grew by 40%. But what we saw was the reduction in state investments, in public money investments, because in 2013 the investment environment for the state was really bad. And state-held companies did very badly. So we completed a number of projects, as for example that of APAC, or the one of the gas duct. We took our pipes toward the east. We built the infrastructure for the Sochi Olympics, and all these projects were completed. So state investments came to a halt. Well, in 2014, sanctions took off, and this is how I see it. Sanctions were criminal in the end. But, they created different possibilities for Russia in economic terms, because Russia found itself completely cut out from the possibility of having long-term loans. Well, dear colleagues, loans are no charity, Well, we were given money, but not for free. Russia was servicing that debt at some $20 billion interest, so we were released. We were set free of all of that. We have a huge amount of reserves, so we decided that the critical input for our country, as for example investment import, was 130 billion per year. We still have a currency reserve that is 3 times as much. This means that Russia, for 3 years, might live in peace without exporting anything. So what do we do with this? Sometimes I believe that our experts want to pile up, and I agree on that. But then, when we're told that there's no money, that's grossly wrong. If that money had been used for the Russian economy, there wouldn't be any requirement for additional funds. Now, to comment on the present situation, we can say that there is some consensus on the part of analysts and the government. All say that we can be released out of the situation through investments. But the problem is to understand how to finance such investments, where there are 2 possibilities. The first implies that a normal credit system is to be put in place, and this is true both for the business and the analysts. But others see things differently and believe that in order to have investment, it is the investment environment that has to be improved. What do I mean by the investment environment? What is a positive environment for investment? Well, it is a time, basically, this is an environment where you can make profits. And to make a profit, you have to have the demand. But that leads to a reduction, though. But we won't be able to control the business. So whatever you do, this might not be harmful, but has nothing to do with investment. The second consideration is that the problem in Russia is that it is not just national politicians and national economists that have a say, because there's a strong corruption and the courts give wrong judgments. What I'm tempted to ask, where is the country where there's no corruption? Anyway, I take your point. We have corruption, but in 2015, where we experienced 7% growth, was there no corruption? Well, I believe that corruption, can be put an end to very swiftly. There are those who give out money, and there are those who don't. You see, you can just stop giving out this money. I'm not stating that we can do that overnight, but at least there's no point in paying lip service to that, because I read different reports of foreign experts telling us that I give money to the street police in my country, but what do they know about it? Western investors have had the problem of localization. So, for example, in the field of cars, in the car industry, we ask them to establish their plants in our country. But now, if they want to sell their cars in Russia, they have to have their factories in Russia. And this is very useful and positive. Now, one last problem with sanctions. We entered the WTO we didn't enter the WTO on a good footing, and our agriculture is not competitive enough, and these sanctions enabled us to introduce the counter sanctions, which are as criminal as your sanction, but that gave the possibility of to our agriculture to breathe some fresh air. But certainly this is no good as it is. So in order to recover growth in Russia, banking policy, investment policy, and monetary policy are to be changed. Let me quote just but one example of what shouldn't be done and what is in fact done in Russia. There's a way of financing which is the so-called project financing, where money is given not to the companies but to the project proper. And the project is then financed so that the central bank allots resources, and then commercial bank collects projects, assess them, and then use the funds for the project. And this proves basically that a certain project is actually effective. I want to repeat that this method had been tabled over and over again in the past. In February, a meeting took place between a number of economists and the president, and the president said that we should have that change adopted. At the Council for Economic Development just 2 days ago, they said that 160 billion rubles were allotted for project financing, 165. If we consider the 13 trillion ruble of investments. When we asked the minister about the effect that would bring about, well, nothing actually has been allotted in the following 2 years. So the bureaucracy is stifling what would normally happen. So I agree with the previous speaker. Bureaucracy is certainly a major hindrance for economic development. Yet, I believe that we cannot do away with it altogether overnight. The worst thing in our country is that of just promoting reform. If any reform is talked about, it will never be accepted. What is a reformation anyway? It is a correction. For example, who wants to live in an apartment that is improved on? We don't need any improvements, so we just wanted to live normally. With those laws that were adopted, we want to obey by those laws. Only then will we be given the possibility to experience economic growth. When that happens, I believe that you'll cancel sanctions. Thank you.